utter Worldie.
In this episode called Effective Player Management, I discussed the importance of an individualised managerial approach to optimise player performance with Dagenham and Redbridge F.C.'s manager Ben Strevens. Ben played for several clubs in both league and non-league football, including Gillingham, Wycombe, Brentford, Dagenham and Redbridge, Crawley Town and Barnet. Across all competitions he made 407 appearances and scoring 76 goals. We discussed the significance of various factors in optimising player performance in player management, such as building trust, fostering a positive team environment, communication, interpersonal skills, leadership and setting clear performance targets. In addition, we discussed the importance of managing conditioning, nutrition and training loads, as they all play key roles in enhancing player performance.
Welcome, Ben. How are you doing?
Yes, all good. Thanks for having me on.
Nice one. No problems. Going to talk today just about the importance of man management to optimise player performance, and then we'll just go through a few topics, if you like, and just give us your opinion. You know, having been a player and now a manager, how's that transition been for you?
Yeah, it was really quick and sudden. Obviously, I was a player at Eastleigh, and then sort of stepped up to be player coach, and then very quickly Andy Hessenseiler wanted me to be his assistant, and within 6 months of being his assistant and enjoying it, he left to go Dover. So I quickly had to transition from being then the player to coach and then manager in less than a year. So it was a little bit difficult to start, but I think the players made it easy for me. They wanted me to be the manager, and we had a really good start. So I found it easy because of the group I had. I think it was lucky with the players that I had at the time.
I suppose you could look at that in one or two ways, couldn't you? That it might be easier sometimes going in as the manager, or if they knew you as a player, then making that transition to the manager. Maybe that works for your advantage in this case.
Yeah, I think my first job, the Eastleigh one, I think the transition from being the player and then obviously coach and assistant was a better way for me to do it. I had a real good understanding of the players. The group hadn't changed a lot. Me and Hess, I've got so much respect for Hess, but even though I was his assistant, when we were recruiting together, so we were sort of organising. So when I took over, it weren't like I was going, I don't want this player, or the opposite of what I wanted to do. It was very much the same, similar thought process. So I think I've probably found it harder going into Dagenham as just being the manager and getting to know everyone pretty quickly and walking into new staff and whole new environment. I think I found that probably hard. And would I have been able to do that as my first job? I don't know. I think I'd have found it quite tough, if I'm honest with myself.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And how do you, because you're relatively new into it, do you draw a lot on your experiences, I would imagine, from managers that you had? If it was me, perhaps I'd try and draw on the best parts of them, or how I like being spoken to, or how I would generalise that? Yeah,
I think so. I think everything we do as people, more than anything in any walk of life, is what you've experienced yourself and people you've been around. I certainly look at the qualities I've had of managers that I've had. Obviously, John Steele had a big impact on me as a player, and obviously now hopefully as a manager as well. Martin Allen, Gary Waddock, I was really lucky to work under these types of people, and they're all real differing characters, but some of the things they did, you certainly learn to respect and understand why they do it. And now being on the other side of it, being a manager myself, some of the stuff where maybe at the time you was a bit, as a player, maybe not agreeing, you look back now, and I think I really understood what they were trying to do. So I think any of our experiences we have, good and bad, there's certainly things I've taken as well where I've seen things happen. I think I wouldn't want to be that guy, being that manager, treating people that way. So, the good experiences you hope help you anyway to do a better job.
Yeah, because John Steele's been around the game for a long time, hasn't he? And Martin Allen was quite well known for some different methods, let's say.
Yeah, both of them brilliant characters, honestly, amazing characters. Martin Allen, honestly, from one day to the next, you didn't know what he was going into training. I love that about him. You always knew where you stood with him as well. It was either, full on loving life, enjoying it, or when it was time to be the other side of him, he had that to him as well. But I just loved the fact that he was different. I really did. Still think he's an amazing character. I think misunderstood at times, but a very good manager. And John Steele was probably the person I've got the biggest respectful in my career. He signed me out of non-league, and then even then I had a long time at Barnet, and he left, and he obviously went to Dagenham, and I'd signed for Crawley, and I'm being honest, a bit of a crossroads in my career, not knowing where I was going to go, and getting me to sign for Dagenham and Redbridge, and then helping me kick on, get back into League One from moving to Dagenham. I'll always be grateful for. And he was tough to deal with at first when I was 18, but by the time I played for him when I was like 25, 26 back at Dagenham, I realised why he'd done that to me, and it set me up to be the person I was probably throughout my career. So he's a top guy as well, and still in and around football now, still helping Southend now. So the longevity,
brilliant.
He knows what he's doing, I think.
And he's got quite a presence about him, hasn't he? So some of the best managers that I've worked with, they walk into a room and everyone pays attention, right? They've got like a presence and an aura about them that you can't quite put into words. But I've seen him around a few times, and he's got that about him, hasn't he?
Yeah, without a doubt. He's and it's not a bad thing. It's I really, really respect him, but he's still got the aura about him. I'm a little bit scared in his presence, even if I see him now. And it's like I'm a 44-year-old man now, but still the way I felt about him when I was 19, 20. I remember probably like learning a tough lesson. I remember I called him John when I'd first joined. Obviously, he's gaffer or manager or whatever. And he had me for about it. So I promise you, even when I see him now, I still call him gaffer. I never called him John again, unless he said I could. But he's just got, like you said, I don't know, it's really hard to put into words, isn't it? But some people have a certain presence about him, and he still has it now. So much respect for him. And I think anyone coming on doing a podcast with yourself that spoke about him, that's had him as a manager, of course there's going to be some lads maybe that wouldn't, because that's manager, you can't please everyone, but I'd say 95% of them would probably have the utmost respect for him. So, good guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you and I both played league and non-league, and there was the league managers. So George Graham would walk into a room, and no matter who was in the room, everyone would be quiet. And that also, I would say, with non-league managers that I had, they also had that presence. And whether that's their character or the personality they have, but also they determine whether you're playing or not. They have a big influence on your career, if you like. So it pays to be respectful in many ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, and what? It's probably one of the things that I don't like now. I've always like walking into a room as a player or whatever it be, even being in a coach, you could walk in and everyone is still the same. I'm pretty aware that sometimes I walk into a room and the boys will be talking about something, they think, oh no, I better stop now, like the manager's walked in, or they act differently, and I don't want them to. I want them to act exactly the same as they do. I try to hopefully not make them feel that way, but it's just, I don't know, like you said, it's just the respect level. You're the guy that's picking the team. I don't know. It's just I'm finding it now, and it's probably the thing I don't like about being managers. When I walk in, it goes quiet. I think God, it's probably
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Probably, but if I don't, it's all good.
No, I'm sure not. Both Carlo Ancelotti and Brendan Rodgers have touched on this, so it's very much like an individualised approach to player management to optimise their performance. So, my question to you is, how important do you think that is? So, to treat the player, obviously as a group, you've got to treat them fairly, but also as individuals. Drawing on your experiences as a player and then now as a manager, how do you go about that, and how important do you think it is?
I think it's probably the most important thing about being a manager. I know obviously tactics and recruitment are huge parts of it, and in-game decisions, but I think I think the way you treat people on a daily basis and understanding different characters and different needs is probably, especially in modern day football, I think it's probably right at the forefront of it now. Still get it wrong, no doubt about it. I'm sure every manager up and down the country that does. You try to get to understand them as people, and some like the encouragement, some like to be left alone, some need a little bit of a kick up the backside in the way you can do it, just because they're different type of characters. But I think finding that balance and finding out about each individual probably separates the top managers. I always look, and I think I look at it now, and I know Pep Guardiola is probably one of the best tacticians, but I do seem like he's got a bit of a relationship with all these players. You can sense it. I've thought about Klopp every time. I think it was really watching him and Mo Salah have a little bit of a thing on the sideline. I didn't see much of that during his reign. I thought he always had a real connection with his players, and they looked like they really wanted to play for him. And certainly Mourinho's had that over his career. I know he has his moments, but I think that's just, he's quite demanding. He wants people to do better for themselves. But it's the toughest part of being a manager, I think, is understanding each person's individual needs and then trying to make it work within a whole group, because you've got 20 odd different people that you're trying to balance out. Some might want to be treated differently, and it's trying to get them all pushing in the same direction.
That leads me on to my next point. So I was speaking to a friend of mine today who's he's like a PTI in the RAF, and he was saying that when they organise things and when they've got a mission, if you like, or a goal they want to achieve rather, that it's clear that everyone understands the objective. So this is where we want to get to, and this is the why we're going to get there, and this is the how we're going to do it. So if people are clear on their objective, when you look into, say, the research for effective man management to optimise player performance, that's one of the main things. So to be clear on what the objective is, so that everyone understands it, so they understand where you're coming from, and they're quite clear on the demands that you set on them, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's getting the goal that you're all going for, trying to show them how and why you want to do it in the way that you want to do it. But I think you need the buy-in and the trust from each person within that. And it's not just the players. I think it's staff around you as well. I'm very big on, just because I'm a manager, I'm happy to say that my assistant Lewis and my first team coach Stu is better at certain things than me, on the coaching pitch or taking sessions, but letting them have the feel that they can do that and they can be themselves, I think, is a part of being a manager, and because their goal is the same as mine, for the team to be successful and us to all do well together. But setting out clear goals and objectives for the group is, it gives you the best chance. It's sometimes hard when things go especially bad during the season or tough moments to keep everyone on the same path, but I think that's the top managers to find a way of doing that, keeping everyone together, and even in the tough moments.
Exactly, so have that clear objective. But you mentioned something else there, trust. So trust for me was quite a big one. So in some ways, with the manager that, let's say we didn't always see eye to eye, I would perhaps try and prove them wrong or prove a point, but I'm not sure how long that lasted. So for me, trust with the manager enabled me in some ways to play better, because it was more natural for me. I wasn't doing what they expected of me. They trusted me and I trusted them to try and do the right thing at the right time. Where if it's coerced or it doesn't feel real that that's what you're doing, then I'm not sure that the longevity of that, I think, is less. Do you know what I mean, Ben?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I do. I think you're trying to get each person to be the best version of themselves, to obviously help the team and help you to get victories and to do a good job. I think that trust that you build with them is obviously working with them, getting to understanding, going back to the first point about getting to know about them, as people and then as players. I signed him for Eastleigh when I was manager there, and now I brought him to Dagenham because I understood what playing for Dagenham was like, understand what the fans like, but I knew him as a character, and him coming back to play for me, he's probably just had his best season he's had to date. But I feel that's only because of the fact that he trusts me, and he's, that I'm signing for a second time now, shown faith in bringing him there and letting him be himself. Whereas the year before, he didn't have quite as good a year, so I was lucky to get him. He didn't quite feel that, and I've had them relationship with players. We just, sometimes you don't quite connect, or they don't trust you wholeheartedly, and that's not always just on the player. That's on us as managers as well, to try and to understand different needs and each player that has.
Yeah, to understand the player needs, exactly. And do you see some of yourself in that player as well? But can you relate to what he's going through? Because I think that's quite important, having been through what you've been through, the career that you've had, with the league and the non-league, that you can relate to your experiences to that player. Would you say that's important as well?
Yeah, look, I spoke about him when we first started talking, but John Steele, I obviously knew that he trusted me and rated me as a player, because he gave me my chance coming out of non-league, and then he also then signed me for a second time and then a third time back to Dagenham. So, knowing that he trusted me, and I felt if I played well or trained well, I was always going to be playing. I think whenever you go onto a pitch and you're unsure whether the manager rates you or not, you're always worrying about, am I going to play, or am I going to be the first one to get subbed? But I have to be honest, at times in my career, I'm the first to admit it, I needed to kick up the backside in the uncertainty of not knowing whether the manager liked me or not, or rated me, to bring out the best in me as well. So I think I probably was a little bit of both. Sometimes I needed to feel like I've got a point to prove as well to get the best out of me, and also that trust and understanding of someone like a Stilly, like I talk about, probably was a big reason I done well for him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's twofold, right? So it depends on you, but also depends on the character of the manager. So if I look back on, say, when I was playing, objectively, some managers I think I would do better for if I kept a certain amount of distance. I just think it worked better that way. So it was clear what we were doing. Whereas others, especially the later on in my career, probably got a little bit closer to, and that worked a little bit better. Perhaps my understanding with them was better, and I understood where they were coming from. Whereas when I was a bit younger, I liked to keep my distance a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's with age as well, isn't it? I think that's the experiences that we have as players. And was I scared? I suppose I was scared a little bit in my younger of having that relationship with a manager. I think as you get older, you realise that they're only human beings too, right? They still have the same emotions as us. They still can have a laugh when the time's right. They can, do being and minding and picking the team. I think when you're younger, you just see them as the manager. They could be picking me or not. As you get older, you start to realise, no, I can have a relationship with him. It's still a work relationship, but he's a good guy as well, or I could chat to him about different types of things. I like that. I honestly, if a player comes to speak to me about something football wise, yes, I'm going to help them, but also to have the door open or to come and say, Gaff, can I chat to you about X, and it's something to do away from football, that they've got the trust to come and speak to you about something going on in their life, and you can try and help them on that. I think that's probably that sets you apart. Them type of conversations you can have with people, they feel they can open up to you, whether it's about football or personal life. And I've had that relationship with managers, and I've really appreciated it in the past.
Yeah. I've always remember your interpersonal skills, isn't it? That the interpersonal skills are good. That if you come across as honest and open that way, then I think that will be a strength of yours. We played briefly together, didn't we, at St Albans for a short period, but you always came across, from what I remember, it's very honest. Like, your interpersonal skills were good, you were communicative, you tried hard, you were honest, and I think they're key attributes that will help you during your career in management. And I think that things that you've touched on with some of your managers, the John Steele and the Martin Allens, that's probably where that trust was built, and I think trust is a massive thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I'm saying, talking about, I'm like 44 years old, second manager's job. Am I going to make mistakes and mess up? Yeah, 100% I am. So if I can stand in front of a group of other men and say, I might make a bad decision on the team selection, or in-game, a bad tactical decision, or get a yellow card for shouting at the referee, and I'm telling them about keeping their heads and stuff like that. If you can stand up there and be that guy, then they're going to look and go, it's okay for me to make a mistake, as long as we don't make the same mistake over and over again. I keep getting decisions wrong, I make mistakes in selections, or even, I'm being honest, at the start of last season, I had a player, and I was trying to help him by being he was a centre forward, I was a centre forward, I was constantly on the get in the box, do this, do that. After about 4 or 5 games, we had a conversation on a Monday, and he basically said, I just want to be left alone. And I was managing him completely wrong. So the rest of the season, I said to the assistant and my first team coach, I'm going to let you guys deal with him. I can't get the best out of him. It don't work what I'm trying to do with him. He don't want me on him. So really hard to sometimes pull yourself back from trying to help someone, because actually I was doing the opposite. I was actually pushing him further away from me. But that's something I've learned in the last year. I wouldn't have been able to do that 5 years ago probably. So I think you just always got to keep learning, speak to people. And the game is changing. There's no doubt about it. Characters are changing as well. It's very different from probably when I first started playing, with you at St Albans. I feel like characters are a little bit different now, and the best managers are able to adapt, and that's why some of them, the longevity's been all the longer. I think they're adapting really well with different types of characters they're having to deal with each day now.
Yeah, and I think that shows a lot of emotional intelligence as well, with that knowing and when to step back. So football intelligence, emotional intelligence, that for me to get the best out of this player, perhaps I need to leave him alone, keep a distance, and maybe our character types and that character type more suit to deal with your coach, and that's what they're there for, right? So perhaps you'll speak to other ones. I know if I look back, there were some coaches that I would perhaps get on better with the manager, and vice versa, and that's the role essentially, isn't it? And trying to tailor that, and who delivers that message best in the way at the appropriate time, and that's what your team will do, right?
Yeah, no, and that's and it's giving them that, just because you're the manager, if you're not going to get everything right all the time. My assistant manager Lewis has been a manager as well. He did it for a spell at Crawley, and I know long term, we ain't going to be a manager assistant manager partnership, because he's going to definitely become a manager himself. I've got full trust in him that I would never want to do it, but if I can't make a day's training, or I can't be at a game for whatever reason it would be, I know that he would give the same messages that I would, or he'd do it in his own personal way. But I honestly, if pre-season was starting tomorrow and for whatever reason I couldn't make it, I could look at my assistant manager and first team coach and I'd be very confident that they don't need me there. They could do the job, they could do it themselves, and they could deal with some boys better than I can. So I think having the trust in your staff around you is really important, that, you know, they're all pushing for the same goal as you. There's no that they want to be better than you. We're all trying to push in the same direction is really important.
Yeah, and that leads me on to the next question. In terms of targets, then, so do you have a target before, like a long-term, mid-term, short-term targets? Because if you've got those targets in place, and if we go back to what we were saying before on clear objectives, do you have those clear objectives in sight for your players? And is that something that you're fully aware of and your team's conscious of?
Yeah, look, I think going into this season, it's like when I was coming as manager at Dagenham, but I had a full season now. But coming into the second season, felt like last year we had sort of a crossover between some of my players and some of the previous managers' players. But this summer, going into the start of this season, you know, I want to get Dagenham and Redbridge back into the Football League. That's my clear objective, is to do that. It's going to be winning the league, right? But there's only one out of 24 teams that's going to do that. But then there's another 6 teams that can get into them playoff positions. So I'm going to reach for the stars and try and win the league next year. That's what I want my players' focus to be. Can we win the league? If we can't do that, then what comes after that? All right, we can get into the playoffs. How are we going to win the playoffs? And that's a realistic goal. You know, I'd have to be honest, if I was we'd stepped up into League 2, I wouldn't be having them realistic goals as a full process going into League 2. Of course, you want to finish as high as you can, but a successful season there might be maintaining the league status, or, you know, can we finish in the top half of the table and see where that takes us? But I want them to have them same aspirations as me. Why not? Let's try and get promoted, try and get Dagenham and Redbridge back into the Football League. If we don't fail, so what? There's going to be another 20 odd teams next year that fail, but that's got to be our target. How are we going to get there? It's going to be hard work. It's going to take a lot of togetherness, a lot of understanding, dealing with down moments. I think I always talk about Stilly, but his biggest saying was, like, don't get too high when you win and don't get too high when you lose. Watching the thing on Roger Federer the other day, I don't know if you've seen it, but he's talking about all them Grand Slams he's won and how much he's won. He only won 54% of the points he played in professional tennis. He lost 46% of the points. It's crazy, but he learned how to focus on the next point. The next point's the most important, and look at all them championships he's won. So we're going to have some down moments next year. We're going to have some tough moments. We're going to have some defeats, but the goal as a group is to try and get Dagenham into the Football League, and it'd be a massive achievement if we can do it.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really good point there, is not to get too low with the disappointments and too high when you're doing well, because it soon comes around and bites you again, right? But I think that's a really good way of managing, like, longer term aspirations, longer term goals, if you have that. And that's not only in sport, I think that's philosophies across, you know, different sciences, if you like, that is to manage those the highs and lows. I think that's really important. That you've touched on some excellent points there. I'm just going to touch on something different now, Ben, in terms of management. So the structure of things is shown to be really important. How your organisation is to optimise player performance. How do you go about doing that? So in terms of managing the nutrition of players, their let's say their data. What's your structure? What's your thoughts on that?
Look, I was honestly, when I walked into Dagenham, you know, I was there as a player, you know, quite a number of years ago now, and I walked back in there as a manager. It was one of the things I was a little bit surprised about, actually. But there weren't no lunch after training, so the boys were finishing training, getting in their cars and going home. We didn't have any GPS vests. That was because they had gone away on a tour to Portugal earlier that year and they got damaged. But those two things, I was like, straight away, look, they're things that can work to our advantage. I spoke to the club and they backed me on it last summer to get lunch for the players. One, it's to get some good nutrition in them, right, to make sure that they're recovering well from the session they've just had and ready for the next day. But two, you're spending time off of the football pitch, sitting with each other, chatting about whatever it would be. Like I'm saying before, I don't care if they're talking about me or talking about their weekend they're about to have, whatever it be, but they're spending time with each other. So we've got that in place, and then we've got the GPS device in place. This summer, it's amazing that we've been backed and we're getting sort of live data, so we can understand, trying to work out training, what individually players might need more on a training day, things like that. And the structure we have in place is the people around me. It's amazing that we was able to get a local chef to come in and do the food for us. Bryony, who's my physio, she's also does the sports science side of things. We've got a couple of interns that will be helping with all that sort of data and stuff like that. And then the training schedule that we've got planning, we had a meeting last week, me, first team coach, and Lewis, the assistant manager. And Lewis had already had a meeting with Bryony talking about what she wants us to hit in certain sessions and how that looks going into pre-season. So we've got a plan in place to come back pre-season. And that's what I'm saying about the trust in others. My staff are doing it for me, which is amazing. I'm just a guy hoping to make sure it all comes together. And that's my role at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think you've covered that, Ben, in terms of organisation. I think you tick that box.
Yeah. Brian.
No. I think you tick that box. And as I go back to it, it's just been shown that it's really important to optimise the player performance. But you've touched on some really, really good things there, and it's backed up by all the research and everything in terms of how you do that. So building trust, your interpersonal relationships, organisation, setting clear objectives, whether that be mid-term, short-term, long-term, and I think trust is a big thing, an important aspect of managing your players and how you communicate with them, and that being transitional, or it's flexible, I think is a better word for it, flexible in terms of how you do that. And I think you've put that across really well.
No, thanks, I appreciate it. Look, it's like I'm saying, it's just experiences, trying to do the best that you feel you can. And I think football's no different to any other job. There's bosses all over the country and in different types of organisations, and it's the people skills. It's chatting to people. It's trusting them to do their jobs. And that's all you can do. You can only try and do your best here. And like I'm saying, I'm learning all the time. Mistakes that I've made last year, I'm going to try my hardest not to make this year. But the mistakes I've made last year hopefully makes you stronger going into this season. But you're realising that. We're speaking about this, me and you, but it's probably every other manager in my league now, and I look at all the levels now of football. Honestly, the coaching's getting better. The way people are treating people, I think, is getting better all the time. That's right into non-league now, so it gets tougher as well, because we're talking about it. I'd like to think we're doing it well, but I'm sure that every other manager's planning exactly the same as me in the National League. So we're all trying to get them. Little fine margins to make us better, but we're doing it in different type of ways.
Yeah, those fine margins are essential, and I think that's really important. But you've covered a lot of those bases there, and I think the awareness of mistakes is important as well. So we have to hold our hands up. Yeah, we could do things better. Perhaps we do things different. But if we learn from them, that's the most important thing. If we learn from those experiences that you and I have had when we were playing, but also in managerial roles, I think we can learn and build upon those. That's how we improve, and that's how we get better.
Yeah, it has to be. We spoke about. In-game stuff, sometimes when the hecticness of a game and the feeling you have during a game, I think if you look back after and you really, really judge yourself, do you make good decisions in them tough moments, whether the other team's on top of you at that time and you're thinking, I'm going to make a tactical change? Is it shape? Is it the personnel? Do you make the right subs? It's what you say to people before the game, half-time, even after game now. Paul Fairclough was my manager at Barnet, and he was the first manager I've ever had do it. And since, whether we won or lost at Barnet, he didn't used to say anything to us after the games other than like get in the showers, see you Monday. We used to debrief on a Monday. Because I do think some real good things can be said after a game if you've won or lost. But I also do think when you look back on it, there's probably sometimes I've lost a game and I'm so full of emotion that I look back and say, did I speak how I should have to the players then? Did they make the mistakes that I said, or did they? I don't know. So it's I'm really conscious now of I'm talking about not getting too high and low, and I've got to be that myself. So when you lose a game and you come in and the crowd's giving you a little bit of stick as you're walking in, and I don't know, you've lost a couple in a row, you're feeling a bit of pressure from the external factors and stuff like that. How do you speak to people after that game? Because that might set you up for the next week or the next game ahead. So, got to get better all the time and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point. And if I go back to my experiences with that, I would say what I try and do, I don't always do it, is to step away from it so I'm objective, so I haven't got that emotional response. So if I step away and take some time, am I still going to say that if I'm not feeling this way? And if I still think I'm going to say that and not feeling that moment, and the adrenaline's gone and the emotional element is gone, and I still feel like I'm going to say that, then it's more likely more correct than incorrect. But then sometimes the emotional aspect of it can also be a strength, right? That we, that's a passion and that's what we do. So yeah, I think but your self-awareness is off the chart. So I think that in terms of your communication, and as I know you, I think you'll do well. I hope you do well. So I wish you all the very best, Ben, for the season and for your insights today. Brilliant.
No, thank you, Matt. I appreciate having you on. Just you talking to me about that stuff. You just saying that there, but the little things you take away is maybe giving yourself that time after a game. Could I still go in and say, right, I'm going to go and say it?
Yeah, I'm still going to say it anyway. But sometimes you hold your hands up. So sometimes it is good to react, isn't it? Sometimes it is good to have that reaction, and an emotional response sometimes is the right thing to do. But it's weighing all those things up. And if we're clear on it, and if we've got that awareness, and I think if we're our players trust us and we trust our judgment, and it comes from good intentions, then that's the idea.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, definitely.
All right, Ben. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciated.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on as well. It's been good.
Utter Worldie.